Welcome to Building Better Communities with Bob Hart. I'm your host, Bob Hart. Today I'm excited because I've invited my friend and longtime resident of Los Angeles, Sean Burton, who's the CEO of Cityview, to be the guest on this podcast. The conversation today will be about how Sean has built his career and his company over the last 20 years into a multifamily development powerhouse and a provider of high-quality housing that builds better communities here in Los Angeles. Sean, welcome. Good to be with you. So I'd like to start with just some basic background for the listeners about the evolution of your career from law, brief stint in entertainment, and then making the decision to go on to the principal side of real estate without really a deep real estate background. Talk a little bit about that and how that evolved, because a lot of people want to evolve that way.
Well, you alluded to it earlier. My first job out of college was working in the Clinton White House when I was 21 years old. And that moved me back to Washington, and it was a great opportunity to do some really interesting things and get a lot of responsibility at a young age. But I decided when I was there that a lot of the people that I met that were the most impactful, that were best at what they were doing, were not the career government people, but people that had worked in business, they'd worked in law, they'd had other careers, and they'd taken those skills and brought them into the public sector.
Now, you were involved in the healthcare task force.
Yeah.
Was it Magaziner? Was he
Yeah,
involved?
I had a good memory. Yeah, Ira Magaziner.
With Mrs. Clinton.
Yeah, it was run by Hillary Clinton, and then Ira Magaziner ran the policy shop.
And Bill came out of the gate quickly with that.
Yes.
And appointed Hillary. It was a little controversial.
Yes, yeah, he did. Well, it was the most important thing, and he wanted to get done, so he appointed her to get it done.
How did you gravitate to that? How did that all come about?
Yeah, so I'd spent some time working on the campaign when I was in college in Orange County.
Oh, okay.
And was very taken with Bill Clinton and his kind of centrist New Democrat message. And I had done my honors thesis in college on healthcare reform, so it was a kind of a perfect fit for my interest and what the president was doing.
Do you think they were too early in the process?
Yeah, I think it was the right. Yeah, I think they were early in the process, but you would have never been able to pass the Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare, if you hadn't had all that pre-work done, during the Clinton years. It really softened the ground. But the thesis is that, it was 1/7 of the economy, and something like 40 million Americans didn't have health insurance,
right.
and which is a real issue for folks. So it was the right thing to tackle. It was a difficult time, but eventually it got done when Obama was president.
So it really took another 10 years or more to...
20 years, yeah.
Just a 20, yeah, I got to do the math. You're right. Clinton was 90, he finished in...
He finished in 2000, but the healthcare task force was 93, 94.
Right,
yeah,
right, the very beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Obamacare got done, it was 2009, 2010.
But Congress wasn't ready.
Well, the country wasn't ready.
The country wasn't ready. What was it like working in the White House at a pretty young age?
I mean, it was a unbelievable experience. I mean, to have access to people of that caliber, the work ethic was incredible. This was the very beginning of the administration, so we all thought we were going to save the world. We were really going to change the world, and like Bill Clinton was in his 40s. He was vibrant. I mean, it was...
That's right, he was in his 40s.
There was a lot of energy. I mean, it was an incredible experience that really shaped a lot of the rest of my life.
I read a quote from another interview you had where you were talking about there might have been a lot of people that would want your job, but they wouldn't want the work associated with the job.
Yeah.
So very high degree of expectation and demands there, right?
Yeah, and hard work. I mean, the hours that people in the White House that they work for very, very little pay because they're driven by passion, by values. Obviously, there's power in those roles. Is incredible. I mean, the work ethic is like nothing I've seen, even working at big law firms or, places like Warner Brothers that were very intense.
Just like the West Wing.
Just like the West Wing, yeah.
It's real.
Exactly, yeah. People aren't as good looking as they are on the West Wing.
Nah, But so how many years was that?
So I was there for 2 years. Yeah, and then went straight to law school in New York from there.
Oh, so you went to law school following the stint there.
Yeah.
You went from undergrad to there.
Yeah.
And then after law school, you joined O'Melveny.
Yeah, I joined O'Melveny. I was looking to work for a big kind of global firm.
Was Warren Christopher there then?
So that's why I went. That's why
Really?
I went to work with Chris, and he'd been a kind of idol of mine and and a model. And he's
super unbelievable background.
unbelievable. And he had found this great model where he said, I can, be a really top-notch professional attorney. I can run a major global law firm, and I can still do public service as well.
Arms negotiations,
exactly.
you name it.
Incredible.
Incredible
And a consummate gentleman and a diplomat. And so, that's a big reason why I picked O'Melveny over other firms, was where could I go that I'd get great training, work with top-notch people, and get access to people like Chris and that model. So, in fact, I was right down the street here, and my office was next door to his in the 1999 building. So,
amazing. I'm sure you had some
Yeah.
very
He
insightful
was
moments with him. He was a real wonderful person, and we're all very proud of him. And so, but you only worked in law as a lawyer for a little while.
Yeah.
And you jumped over to the principal side only at Warner Brothers.
I was there about, 2.5 years or so, and I intended to stay longer. I like being a lawyer, but we worked on a big transaction at Warner Brothers. It was an M&A transaction, and I'd gotten to know some of the Warner executives in that process. And when it was over, they called the firm, and they actually they were launching a new kind of internet, new media division, and they
What
called.
years was that?
1999. Yeah,
99.
So the internet was taking off, and they called the law firm and said, "Hey, can we borrow Sean for 3 months and we'll pay his hourly rate? We want him to office with us over here because we have all these deals we need to get done." And I was there maybe 3 or 4 weeks where they realized they were paying O'Melveny a whole lot more than they had to pay me in order to do that job. So
And you drank the Kool-Aid.
I drank the Kool-Aid. Yeah, it was great, and I enjoyed being a lawyer, but I was really interested in the business side because I felt like the business people got to decide what deal to do and value it and
It's really almost more
it.
business affairs than it is law when you work in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, and when I jumped over there, my deal was that I wouldn't have to be a lawyer anymore. I could go into the investing side, and then I could hire someone else to do the legal piece. So that's what I did. So that was kind of my exit from being a full-time
so you
lawyer.
kind of were able to make this crossover without trying that hard. A lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah.
So you got the bug. You worked for how many years? 2 years?
No, I was there for 5 years. Yeah.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I believe I know who your father-in-law is.
Yes. Yeah.
A very, very well-known person, Henry Cicernos.
Yeah.
And was that what led you to Cityview?
So, it was interesting. When I was a lawyer at O'Melveny, I did a lot of real estate work. They had a lot of big real estate clients. Took a lot of clients public. And I really liked, what I liked about real estate, it was a great intersection between business and communities and politics and policy. It's kind of all wrapped up into that. And I missed it when I was at Warner Brothers. And even though it was a great place to work and I worked with really smart people, I wasn't passionate about entertainment. And I think to be good at something, you got to be passionate about it.
You really do.
Yeah, and I just wasn't, I was missing other things, and Henry was starting Cityview,
right.
And the thesis at Cityview was that there was going to be a generation of people who were going to want to live not in the suburbs but closer in to the action.
Again.
Yeah, they want to live near their jobs, near nightlife, near culture.
And that was kind of during the time period where downtown LA was going through just adaptive reuse years, and people were moving back into the city.
And we called it infill housing, and so Henry was forming this firm, and I was nervous about leaving to join because do I want to work for my father-in-law? What's that like?
Well, there were also a lot of very seasoned older executives there too.
Yeah,
and you were kind of the youngest guy on the team.
And that's what I came in to do, and that's frankly the reason I did come in is there was some very smart people, kind of co-founding this firm that had a lot of experience, and what they needed was a young kind of deal guy who was going to come in and hustle and really work to do business development, or what we would call acquisitions now in our business. And I had a lot of fire and a lot of passion and wanted to do it. So after about a year of discussions, right as Cityview got launched, I left Warner Brothers to join that, and I was one of the first 4 people we had. Yeah.
Is that right? Wow. Yeah, I think I met you just shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
And when you started at Cityview, the company was more of an allocator to investors as opposed to a developer.
Right. Yeah. No, it was
a different model.
It was a different model, and we had kind of a non-discretionary separate account from a big pension system. And the idea is we were going to partner with home builders and to do this infill housing. That's what the term of art at the time was, infill. And we would provide the capital, and they would do the work, and we would manage the investors. And that was a great model. We did a lot of deals in the first 5 years or so, but then the GFC hit. California housing was kind of right in the teeth of that. And we ended up in a situation where, we had a bunch of operator partners, developer partners who lost their focus. They went bankrupt. They weren't, executing.
They're buried alive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they got buried alive. And we realized, frankly, at that point, we weren't close enough to the real estate, and said, we're going to start to shift our model, and we're going to build out a team kind of and vertically integrate. And so that took us a lot of years to do. I mean, we did it kind of organically.
Yeah.
We started with development, building out a development team, and then after that we built out construction management.
But you also had a acquisition business with Class B housing, and you would invest with operators like myself. At the time I was with Kennedy Wilson.
Exactly, yeah. I think we did 6 or 7 deals
We
together
did.
over the years. Yeah, so
We did.
Those were the days, Bob.
They were.
Yeah.
And but I always remembered in working with you and your team, you have a very good team.
Thank you.
A lot of longevity, just good people.
Yeah, thank you.
Talk about the team and what it took for you to develop that, and how you build trust among the team and the clients. 'Cause that's super important.
I mean, we realized very early on that we weren't really in the housing business, we were in the people business, right? And we needed really smart people who were dedicated and focused and work collaboratively, who are mission driven. I think that's part of what we do. I think people feel like we build better communities, right? That is part of what we do. I mean, our first obligation is to our investors and to make them their return, but there's different ways to do that, and we feel like we try to do that in the right way for the communities that we're in. And I think that's one of the reasons we're welcomed by elected officials and others into their communities. So, that's been a focus since day one, and culture. I mean, a lot of people talk about culture, but I really do think it's a major priority of the firm, and we invest a lot in that culture.
I remember we would have some talks about that in your office.
Yeah.
And it's sausage making. It takes a little while. It evolves, it changes, and so forth. But it's all worked out. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's worked out. Like I feel very blessed that we have the team that we do, and we have, you mentioned the longevity of the team. We have very low turnover. People stay, they make a career out of Cityview, and we invest a lot in their development. We actually created something about 5 years ago called the Cityview Leadership Academy, where we take the mid-level executives at Cityview, and you have to be kind of chosen to be in this program. And it's a 2-year program where we bring in a Harvard Business School professor to help train them on best practices on management and operations and strategy, and there's a number of other components. And so people kind of go through it for 2 years and graduate, and it's a great way to develop leadership and kind of invest in the next generation.
So it goes on while they're working.
Yeah, it goes on while they're working. Yeah, it goes on while they're working. Yeah, and we try to be mindful of how busy people are, so you don't overwhelm them. But every kind of 6 to 8 weeks, they're having something in the Leadership Academy and working with one of the best professors literally in the world on these issues. So it's a big investment for us, but I think it pays a lot of dividends.
Certainly sounds great.
Yeah.
It's a great model. So you, like me, have navigated a lot of cycles. And I think you were appointed the CEO of Cityview at the start of the GFC.
Yeah.
That was a tough cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say it's like being promoted to captain of the Titanic after it hit the iceberg. That's
I know you had some partnerships with some large firms that you had to work through.
Right.
Talk about how to navigate.
Yeah. So look, it's
the Titanic.
There was a lot of additional icebergs, but look, I lived on a plane that first year after I became president of the firm. Dealing with our investors, dealing with our lenders, I mean, this. Like, you got to give people the straight scoop, right? Because a lot of people come in and try to BS them, or
it's hard to deliver bad news.
Yeah, Yeah, it's hard to live, but it's so, it's so worthwhile. And the saying,
The truth will set you free, right?
exactly. We say bad news travels fast. That's our motto in Cityview. And so you just level with the investor, the bank, and you explain what your plan is and how you're going to work the problem. And we were able to work through, our issues during the GFC, and then really kind of grow like a rocket ship out of that.
Yes, you did.
So, but it's it came from building those relationships, and those are, as you know, the relationships that you go through the fire with. Those are the ones that really are with you for a long time because you've seen people's true colors.
So, talk about a little bit how other people that are trying to make transitions from one field to another, in this case, in your case, from law to business to real estate, can do so even when there's turbulent times.
Yeah. Well, that can sometimes be the best opportunity when there's turbulent times.
I agree with you.
There's openings, right? Like there's a lot of people in our industry now, Bob, as you know, who have spent a few years working at a firm, and their promote or carried interest isn't really worth anything anymore, and so they leave, and it creates new opportunities for other people to come up. What I always encourage young people to do when someone asks me to go to coffee or ask for advice is to really work on picking a high quality organization with smart people who will train you. There's kind of no substitute for that. I mean, I've been really, really lucky in my career to work for people that I learned a lot from over time and helped teach me the business. And we were busy, so I got a lot of reps, a lot of batting practice. I think that's important to really pick some quality some quality companies and people that you work with when you're young, so you can develop those skills.
Yeah, I think what's also important is sticking with it. Because you're going to go through some bumps.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were moments where you were saying, God, I miss my law office, or I miss my space at the Warner Brothers Studios in the Burbank lot.
Yeah, I miss my office on the lot. I still miss my office on the lot, but...
Yeah, it was probably a little bit more fun in some ways.
Let's stick to it. That's good. No, that's good advice, right, is to stick it out. And as you know, right, that's when I learned the most, is when we were really in the thick of it in the GFC, and even in the last couple of years as we've dealt with challenges because of interest rates and other things. I mean, that's when the team really bonds together, and that's when you really develop that expertise and skills, I think.
So you go from basically joining the team, there's an old guard there, you transform the company, you go to the GFC, you go from allocator to developer. Yeah. That's a lot of evolution.
It's a lot of evolution, yeah.
And development is a whole different business than just buying real estate or rehabbing real estate.
Right.
It requires a lot of precision and real talent.
Yeah.
And you've evolved now over that period of more than a decade, where I believe the LA Business Journal said that you were voted as the #1 apartment developer in LA, and maybe even in California.
Yeah, and
that's
LA,
a big deal.
For the last 12 years or so, which means we've done the most here, been very active.
And you've stuck the course.
Yeah,
you stuck to a course.
And we really like it. Look, to your point, it's very complex. Takes a lot of resources. It takes longer. You have to really have patience. When we do our value add deals, those are. We close on the deal, we're immediately rehabbing units and common areas. Development obviously takes years and years. But we think it's a true kind of special advantage that we bring, because it is hard, and we have our special sauce, having done more than 10,000 units now of new product, of development.
Talk about the little ingredients you sprinkle into that little special sauce.
Yeah.
What are some of the ingredients?
So look, it starts with, not that different than a value add, right? Picking the right location on the right submarket. There's no substitute for that.
Well, I've noticed you've picked micro locations very well. Yeah. Very bespoke locations within urban markets.
Yeah, that's a big part of that value of our value add, is the site selection, and it's understanding what the community wants as well. Because often we're taking something through an entitlement process. So you're working with elected officials, you're working with community groups, you're working with city officials, and being open and receptive to what's important to them. You can't always do what everybody wants, but you can really listen and understand, and then try to design something that fits with the character of the community that you're in.
Talk about the deal that you just did that went online last year. I think it's is it the Jasper?
Yeah,
Down
downtown.
in the area near where SpaceX is, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah. Jasper's actually right near USC. We have another project near SpaceX, but
What's the name of that one?
Yeah, that's Apollo is the one there. Yeah,
Probe.
Yeah. So
Gee.
I'm a space fan. I'm a space fan. What can I say? But yeah, Jasper was it was a perfect kind of Cityview deal. It was a dilapidated warehouse that used to make textbooks, but now it was kind of abandoned near USC at Adams and Grand. LAPD had lots of issue there. There were drugs and crime and other issues there. And we actually came in and put it under option, took it through an entitlement, changed the zoning, designed a 296 unit building that we built and delivered in August. And it was interesting, we were obviously worried because it's near downtown, and downtown has a lot of vacancy, and we were worried about how was lease-up going to go? Would we get our rents? How quick would it be? And we usually get 5 to 10% pre-leasing before we move people into a building. We had 60% at Jasper.
Wow.
And it was because, a team built a great project. It's got 2 rooftop decks and a pool and a great gym. But it was really because you just don't see any good new product being built in this price range. So when we did open up, people flocked to us. And it's not student housing, it's for professionals and others. So it's been a great project. And again, very early on, we met with the council office and the community and said, what's important to you? And they said, well, we'd like some community-facing retail, and we'd like, so a community room and some other things. So we were able to incorporate all that into the design and be welcomed with kind of open arms from the community versus a lot of developers who shove their way in.
You kind of created this oasis.
Yeah.
Almost like the Beverly Hills of South LA there. Yeah. So it's interesting. You're on the doorstep of USC, but not necessarily just students.
We have very few
there.
undergrad students. I mean, we have there's 24,000 people who work in or around USC in some capacity with the university, whether professors or administrators or coaches, and not a single one of them wants to live with undergrads. So, we get a lot of those kind of folks. We built housing like this in Berkeley and other places to appeal to this business plan. We do have some international students or graduate students who are maybe a little bit older, but it's been a great project.
Besides infill Los Angeles, what other markets are you now active in?
So, we're in San Diego, we're in Orange County. We've done quite a bit in the Bay Area over the years. We haven't done much in the last 3 because of the challenges it's faced, but we've been a really large developer in the Bay Area. We've done a couple $2 billion worth of product there.
Yeah.
Denver's a big market for us, and Boulder. We really like the kind of Rocky Mountains and in that area. And then, we've been in Phoenix and Dallas. We're not there now, but those are markets we've been in over time.
So you alluded to the Bay Area a little bit, and certainly the credo of this podcast and part of your ethic is to build better communities.
Yeah.
How do you do that in a city like San Francisco that coming out of COVID has had so many issues that have created urban challenges?
Yeah. Look, that's a $64,000 question.
Yeah.
I think it starts with some of the things I think the mayor's working on now up there, which is, you got to kind of get your house in order, right? People need to feel safe, right? If people feel safe in a community.
I don't think you'd want to have your daughter or my daughter running around some of those areas of Market Street
a bunch of parts of San Francisco are tough. And so I think you got to focus on public safety. You got to focus on things like retail crime, right? Because that changes the character of a neighborhood, and then you end up with, kind of a vicious circle. They've called it a doom loop in San Francisco. I will say, as someone who owns property up there and spent times up there, I find the news reports to be different than our experiences when we're there. And look, the Tenderloin's bad, but the Tenderloin was bad when I lived there 25 years ago.
Right.
It is a place that's attracting a lot of talent still. Now they talk about AI, but you have this cluster of educated workers, and it's hard to replicate that. So we think San Francisco will come back. It's just going to take some time, but they got to get their house in order.
I think COVID kind of created this almost dystopian feeling because the streets were empty.
Yeah.
Yet you had people that were in rougher shape wandering the streets and.
It becomes a loop, and I think I think a lot of the tech and other companies that went 100% remote, that contributed to that. They have to take some of the responsibility for what's happened in San Francisco. And I think you saw in some ways the opposite happen in New York. You saw New York leaders like Jamie Dimon, like John Gray at Blackstone, and others get together and say, you know what?
Much more engaged.
Right. Yeah, we're going to bring people back. We're going to bring our employees back to the city because it's good for New York. And I think that ethic matters. And I'm hoping you're going to see some more of that in San Francisco and the Bay Area.
Well, I think what you're starting to see, if you go up and down the West Coast from LA to San Francisco and Portland and Seattle, you saw these urban areas becoming more homeless, more blighted, and eventually the city councils and the mayors are coming along and saying, we've got to do something here.
Right.
We're not helping the people we're intending to help.
The governor of California is very focused
Michael
on
Schellenberger's book called San Francisco.
Yes.
It's a real expose on how some of the progressive policies have just failed the people it was intended to help.
Right.
And you and I are aligned, I think, politically in our values, but
we are.
It's been a very tough thing for cities to cope with. And talk about, because you were very involved with Eric Garcetti's 2 terms. I know he's a friend of yours. Now we have Karen Bass, whole different style. She seems to be coming out of the gate strong here in LA and trying to do as much as she can quickly to deal with the issues of homelessness. But from your perspective, what are you seeing?
So I think Mayor Bass has done a really good job. I mean, I think she inherited a really difficult problem, right? 65,000 homeless, a lot of issues going on in the city, crime
65,000 chronically homeless.
Chronically homeless, at any given time. Right.
At any given time.
Yeah. And she, to her credit, said, I'm going to come in and I'm going to focus like a laser on this. And I don't know, I think she housed 18,000 people or something in her first year. That's the number I've seen. But there's a lot more to go. And to your point, more people become homeless. But I think the mayor's focused on the right things. She's got a lot of energy. She kind of doesn't take no for an answer or accept bureaucracy. I heard her tell a story. I moderated an interview with her at ULI at the Urban Land Institute when I was here in LA. And she told a story about how there was a number of these homeless units that had been built that were sitting empty, like 1,000 units or something like that, and had been empty for a number of months. And she said, how is that possible? You have people sleeping on the street. And her team told her, well, the reason that is because some federal money went into those. And so the federal government requires people to prove they're homeless. They have to fill out a 36-page form with 3 forms of ID.
Oh my God.
And then after that's turned in, it's evaluated. Then there needs to be an inspection of the unit. And so the mayor, to her credit, said that's ridiculous. So she called up Martha Fudge, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, who was a friend of hers from Congress, and said, we have this issue. And the secretary said, well, this is the law and can't change it. And so the mayor said, well, what about if we create a pilot program, we move people in, and then I'll bring in social workers to help people fill out the paperwork, but they'll be inside. And so they said, okay, we'll do that. So she's a problem solver.
Yeah, she also understands how the wheels of government turn.
Yes, which is important.
It was a tough election, obviously. She won by a narrow margin because a lot of people felt that maybe Rick Caruso was more equipped. Yet in some ways, she was very equipped to deal with turning the wheels of government.
I think, and part of the reason full disclosure, I supported her when she ran for mayor. Part of the reason
So did Dick Simon.
Yes, I felt that this was going to be a job where you needed to hit the ground running and understand government, and it's local, it's state, it's federal, and how they interact together. And you need all of those resources to even begin to solve this. And I think she's showing people why I think she was a good choice for Los Angeles.
So we're coming out of this COVID hangover, and then we get whacked with this high inflation.
I haven't heard of it. Is that happening?
I think so. And we seem to be getting it under control, but interest rates are still persistently higher. And they're probably going to be higher for longer.
Right.
Lots to navigate.
Difficult. Difficult. And
how are you doing it?
Well, look, we're doing it asset by asset. It's really crimped new investment. I think we underwrote,
particularly in development.
We've only started 1 new development in the last 2 years. I mean, usually we would start 4 or 5 because of interest rates. If you can buy at a discount to replacement cost, why would you start a new development today? But I think we underwrote 180 deals last year across all of our markets, and we did
a lot of underwriting.
And we did 3 that we could make work. 2 of those were land option deals, and 1 was a recap of some existing assets. So, it's been very difficult to get anything new done in this environment with negative leverage. I will say the beginning of this year has been much more positive. There's more in the market. Things seem to have repriced.
Yes.
So there's more that's in the strike zone that we see. The 10-year Treasury has come down some off its peak. It's not low enough, but there's been some movement. So we think it's going to be slow beginning of the year, but we're hopeful as we get to later in the year, things loosen up a little bit and there's more activity.
Yeah. We've seen at TruAmerica here a new energy in the marketplace, particularly when deals are of good quality, well located, and fairly priced.
Right.
And what's happening is they're getting a lot of attention and getting a lot of bids.
Right. Right.
So even though the price starts very rationally, it becomes a lower cap rate.
Yeah.
Now, it's not going back to 4s and 3s.
Right. Right.
But it may be going from mid to high 5s to low to mid 5s in a matter of a few seconds.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because equity is in such hot pursuit of deals.
Yeah.
And I think people are starting to look the other way on negative leverage, thinking we're a year or 2 away from
some real rent growth. And people can tell themselves a story about growing out of
They're
it from
convincing
a perspective.
themselves.
Yeah. No, I think you're saying that. Look, and we focus primarily on these, western half of the country, really supply-constrained markets. And, you're not seeing deals traded at a 6 cap for newer vintage stuff in those markets. I mean, you're still seeing activity in kind of the 4.75 to 5.25 range. And
anything that trades that's a unicorn.
Yeah.
It's doing it because there's either some distress or there's some other issue that is causing it not to get the attention it deserves.
Right.
But there are very few unicorns.
There's very few unicorns by definition.
People would ask, during the coming out of the great financial crisis, I started to get more active then. And, wow, you're buying at 7 caps? I said, for 7 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the markets evolve very quickly now. They're very efficient. We all have the same underwriting models and the same data.
Right. No, I think that's true. And there's a lot of capital sitting on the sidelines. A lot of money's been raised. There's a lot of people waiting for the right opportunity. So we like to say internally, and the reason we underwrite so many deals is when the window opens, we don't know when it'll be, but it's not going to be open for that long. And so we want to make sure we're incredibly active and engaged in those markets so we can move quickly and take advantage of the opportunity. Development's a little bit different. That'll be after that, and we're going to need to build more housing in these markets because of the supply shortage that we have. And so those deals are on a little bit different pace, but for the value add, we need to be ready.
Yeah. I think the period of time that we're in right now, it's interesting. We still have housing, a fair amount coming online that was on the boards the last couple of years, but not as much as in the planning phase now.
Right. No, it's really dropped off. And look, that's a lot of what we're focused on now at Cityview is we are doing land option deals in kind of key markets, Tech Center in Denver, San Diego on Balboa Boulevard, Walnut Creek on the BART line. We're doing one here in LA, and where we can, put land under option, take it through an entitlement process, line up the GMP contract, line up the financing, and then just buy the land right when we're ready to basically start construction. At 12 months from now, 18 months from now, 24 months from now, in these great supply-constrained locations where nothing's been built for the last 2 or 3 years, but you still have good job growth, you still have good population growth. So we're kind of lining up this development pipeline for 25, 26, 27, and won't pull the trigger until the market's ready.
Let's shift gears to talk a little bit about capital formation, because that's one of the biggest challenges for any developer. And you've evolved from I know you still do joint ventures, but really a JV model, and you also have a fund model. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've really been blessed to have a variety of good capital over the years. We've always had a bucket of institutional capital, whether non-discretionary or discretionary. Big public pension systems, insurance companies, the same kinds of investors that are investing with you. And that's great because it's allowed us to move quickly and take advantage of the best opportunities and win deals. But we've always had more good deals than we've had discretionary capital. So over the years, we've developed this, kind of large joint venture relationships, where if we want to, buy a big portfolio, or we want to do something maybe that doesn't fit in a fund because it's a different strategy, and then we have a whole high net worth bucket as well.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and we primarily did that. We did a number of opportunity zone deals in the last few years. We did 5 of them, and these were deals that we would have done anyway, but they happened to be zoned opportunities. So it didn't make sense to put a tax-exempt investor in there. So we have, a couple hundred high net worth investors as well, and we've recently moved
those
into
QOZs that you put them in?
Yeah, in opportunity zones.
Sure.
But some of those have now converted into fund investors or joint venture investors.
Isn't that interesting?
They become kind of family offices, and so we're really blessed to have this kind of wide range of capital, and we can find the right opportunity in multifamily in our markets and then pair it to the right capital source.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Jobs Act that really started to create opportunities for people that normally didn't invest in real estate to do so.
Right.
Now, you're not crowdfunding.
Right. No,
but
we're not. Yeah.
you are raising money from private folks as well.
Yeah, we have been, and that, that's not our primary focus. Primarily, we're institutional, but it is nice to have that sleeve for the right opportunity. It's been nice to see some of those convert into fund investors or JV investors as well.
Well, I think their capital tends to be sticky too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not as fickle as institutional capital can be.
That's right.
So Cityview is very busy developing.
Yeah.
You've had a lot of projects that you've got going in the, kind of the 23 to 25 period that you've delivered on. I think it's over 1,000 units, key markets in California. Talk about the development process for these projects, any hurdles you faced, how you're dealing with it.
Yeah. So look, it's, we focus on markets that are supply constrained. That's our thesis. Which means that it's hard to develop, and the process is challenging. But I also think that's where we add value and have expertise. One of the things that differentiates us. So, as I mentioned earlier, we start very early on in that process, talking with elected officials, talking with the community about what's the right, project for a specific neighborhood. We like to say, it's a little bit like camping. When they say when you camp, you want to leave, the wilderness better than you found it. And we think about that as we're developing. We want to leave the community better than we found it. So we really wanted to integrate. So we spent a lot of time that. We spent a lot of time obviously understanding who the renter's going to be, right? What's needed in that market? Is it a market that's going to focus on families? So we want bigger units and different kind of amenities and make sure we're in a good school district, or is it more of a young professional market? We're going to do more studios and ones and think about different kinds of amenities and maybe have more co-working space. So we're spending a lot of time on that, and then we build a lot in our market. So we're blessed to have really good general contractors, work with the same subs. We can drive pricing because we do a lot, and then it's really an execution game. Right, it's really you're really focused on blocking and tackling, and there's a million little details. And
you said the other day, I think I heard you say the buy. You're not making it in the buy necessarily. You're making it in the execution, the management. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and that really matters. And then I think for us, we're a very engaged developer. So even though we're hiring a general contractor, we're subcontractors, our development executives and construction management executives are sitting in the construction trailer. They're in the owners' meetings. They are helping to drive decisions. We're unsticking problems. When you have problems with DWP or the building and safety or engineering or whatever, we're getting actively involved, as opposed to, I think some developers are more passive and they say, okay, we have a general contractor, we're paying them to do that. We're just going to stay arm's length. Like, we're really in the details, and we often feel that we kind of got to drag the contractors over the line. But we've learned to apply that model because that's what it takes to try to deliver these on time and on budget.
I think that's a good segue to what I was going to ask you next, because like myself, I think you're a very positive person. You look for the good in things.
You have to be in our business, Bob.
You do. But it's harder as a developer because there's a lot of headwinds out there.
Yeah.
And it sounds like what you're doing with contractors and others is inculcating them toward taking an active role, positive thinking.
Yeah.
But look, let's be honest about LA.
Yeah.
You got ULA, you got this third attempt in 5 years to repeal Costa-Hawkins.
Right.
You got layer upon layer, I can't even state them all, of rent control now
Right.
at
Right.
the state level
Yeah.
and the local level and even at the county level.
Yeah.
That's a lot to overcome.
It's a lot to overcome. Yeah, and it's one of the reasons a lot of investors are down on California and on LA, which is something that we spent a lot of time talking to elected officials about, trying to explain to them that, we have this huge housing crisis because we have a huge housing shortage, and the only way we're going to solve that is if we build a lot more housing. I mean, the numbers for Los Angeles are staggering. When the state government and the local governments got together to look at our housing problem, they did an analysis and determined that we need to build 57,000 housing units per year between now and 2030 just to keep equilibrium, not even to address the shortage that we have. Okay,
Yes.
57,000 per year. So we went back and we looked at 2010 to 2019, which was considered the boom years, right? When there was plenty of equity and debt was zero and everybody wanted to build. And in our heyday, we built 15,000 units a year. So we have to build 4 times as much just to keep equilibrium to address this issue.
Yeah.
And we spent a lot of time talking to elected officials about that and why it's so important. I do think, one, I agree with you. You have to be optimistic to do this business.
You have to be persistent. You have to be optimistic.
You got to really believe
engaged.
in it. Yeah. But I will say, I think there's been some really terrific state legislation that's come out in the last couple of years that has created a lot more by right housing. Assembly Bill 1287 is one that's really allowed developers to go back and to re-entitle projects and to add more units. And you have to add more affordable as well, but it makes sense because you get the additional density. You can have kind of smarter parking ratios than you have in the old regime. And so I do think there's a recognition at the state and local level that we dramatically need new housing production, and that's got to be the focus. And then look, we got to fight the rent control, the new initiatives, because they don't make sense. And every housing economist says, whether they're progressive or they're conservative, that rent control has the opposite of the intended effect, right? And it plays an important role now, but some of these ballot initiatives obviously make no sense and would just crush any sort of new housing.
Well, if you look at, I believe the ULA tax repository of the money that's come in, it's been very small in comparison to prior years of what transfer taxes would normally create, because transaction volume is down.
It's been a fraction of what they promised, and ULA is such a tragedy because it was missold to voters. It was said this is a tax on millionaires and billionaires and their houses in the Palisades and Brentwood and Bel Air.
It was actually a tax to lower the GDP of LA.
Yes,
because
yeah.
real estate creates its own win.
Yeah.
From fees and
For sure.
all sorts of stuff.
And jobs and like rents are not going to go down if we build less housing. They're going to go up, which is the problem. So
maybe that Harvard thing that you're doing would be good to do downtown on Main Street with a few of the folks sitting
supply
in the
and demand
there.
Economics.
Now you can really do some good there, Sean. I dare you to consider that.
Yeah, thank you.
But I think that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
So you've also been very ESG centric. I've read that in your literature. I think you and I were always ESG centric before people knew it was ESG.
It wasn't called ESG, yeah. I mean,
it was called doing the right thing.
Yeah, look, we've always had a diverse workforce, inclusive workforce. We serve a diverse community. It makes sense to have a diverse workforce. We make better decisions. That's, again, before there was ESG. We've been focused on sustainable development and investment since like 2005, so well before ESG existed. But we always thought it was the right thing to do, and always with a lens of, how does this make our project more valuable? How's this improving returns for our investors? We can do that in the right way by making our buildings more efficient, et cetera. So, we've always considered ourselves a responsible investor, and will continue to be so.
I totally understand that, and I appreciate that about you. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit more personally. Like I said, I've known you not quite half your life, but about 20 years. But tell us one thing that the audience would be surprised to know about you. I mean, I know you're an attorney by background. I know you now grew up in Santa Barbara and went to school in Irvine. You're kind of a Californian through and through, but tell us a little unknown fact about yourself.
Well, I'll say one of the most amazing experiences I have is after September 11th happened, I was very angry and I wanted to do something. And so I talked to my wife about joining the military, and I had a 1-year-old and she was pregnant with another one, and so she said it's not a good idea if you leave right now, but I actually joined the reserves and became an intelligence officer in the Naval Reserves.
In the Naval Reserves?
In the Naval Reserves. And it was
Wow.
interesting that this program was created because there are certain communities like intelligence and law and medicine where there wasn't enough officers and enlisted to serve the needs of what they call the warfighters. And so the Navy created this program where they direct commission you into the program and you do actual intelligence work. So for 8 years I would go down on my weekends to San Diego and drill, and I would go to Hawaii or Dam Neck, Virginia,
Wow.
or other places and contribute to the effort by doing intelligence work.
I wonder why it was hard for us to have dinner. Was it monthly? Or?
It was monthly and then 17 days a year. So I basically use a lot of my vacation days to go do my active training. And it was an incredible experience. I mean, I got to contribute to an important cause. I got to work with
That's
really
amazing.
inspirational people and do my part. So that's something that, I don't talk about that a lot, but that's kind of a little known fact of something that I've
I
done.
would have not known that had you
Yeah.
not mentioned it.
Yeah.
It just adds to the lore. We talked a little bit about your earlier career. Is there one interesting or pivotal transformational story or event that happened that led you to the place you're at today?
I would say one of I've really been fortunate at times in my life to have people help me at a key time. I was all set to go to University of Virginia Law School. UVA, and I had actually moved my stuff into UVA and committed there, and I was actually flying home on Air Force Two in one of my last trips I did working
Wow.
with Vice President Gore, and I got a call. I called. You could call from the phone, which was a very cool thing to do
Isn't
back
that
then.
cool?
From the plane. I'm not sure that was the best use of tax dollars, but I called my roommate and he said, "Hey, you've gotten into kind of NYU off the wait list." And,
Oh, he opened your mail for you.
and they opened my mail for me, and I I went up to check out NYU. I ended up meeting the dean, and he gave me this tour of the university, and at the end of that, he'd said, what does it take to get you to go here? And I said, look, I can't afford it. I'm putting myself through school, and I happen to live in Virginia when I worked in Washington, so I get in-state tuition. And he said, look, if we give you a scholarship, would you consider coming here? And I was an aspiring lawyer, so I said, we put it in writing, and he left the room and he came back and he gave me a letter for a scholarship and to go to NYU and change the whole course of my life. Most importantly, first week I met my wife at NYU. We were
Now your son goes to school
and now
there.
my son ended up, going to school and playing baseball at NYU for 4 years, and
So you're a little bit of a New Yorker too.
a little bit in New York.
And I know you have a residence there
Yeah,
now.
I spent a lot of time in New York, but that was one of those moments
That's
where
awesome.
where
That's where you met your wife.
Yeah, that's where someone took a risk on me and changed the whole course of my life.
You mean she took a risk on you?
Yeah,
There's your transformational event.
exactly. One of the best decisions I ever made.
Fast forward the movie. So what are your goals now going forward? What do you want to accomplish? You've built a company. You've transformed it from its start. What do you want to do personally and professionally?
Yeah.
going
Well, look,
forward?
Cityview just had its 20th anniversary, and we're pretty excited about the future. I mean, I think that we're going to see some of the best buying and investing opportunities over the next few years that I've seen in my career, and we've spent 2 decades building a platform to take advantage of it. We have the team, we have the track record, we have the capital, and the platform. So I'm going to continue to lean in there, and I got a management team that's in their 40s and early 50s, and they all have gas in the tank and see this as an opportunity. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to continue to do public service. I always like to do one meaningful public service thing at a time. I sat on the City Planning Commission here for a number of years. I obviously did the Navy. I was the president of the airport, and now I sit on the National Authority in Washington. And so I always do something where I can continue to contribute in a significant way. And then, look, I'm blessed with 2 wonderful kids, one who's in college, one who just graduated college, and just had, my 25-year wedding anniversary. So I want to continue focusing on my family, but I feel very lucky. Even though times are tough in real estate, it could be worse.
It could be a lot worse. How do you like being an empty nester?
I love it. I love
do?
it. Yeah. Sorry, I hope my kids don't watch this. I love guys being with you too, but no, my wife and I have really enjoyed it. And she recently retired from her job, and so now she's able to travel with me a lot more, and we can go do fun things together. So it's great. I love it.
Well, Sean, it's been great having you, and I'll ask you one more final question. Even though you're a young man still, how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, it's funny. No one's ever asked me that question, Bob. But look, I would like to be remembered as somebody who gave more than he took from the world. In the sense of, I'm really proud that we've, of the firm we've built, and I want to be remembered as someone who built something, built something substantial for our investors, and also for the people who, put their careers with us and their trust in us. And from a public service perspective, I like to remember as someone who contributes significantly. I'm really proud of what we've done at LAX. I mean, you mentioned we're
getting better and better.
20
you
billion.
You can get through it now.
You can get through it, and in a
30
year,
minutes.
in a year when the People Mover opens, it'll even be better. But fundamentally transform that airport, $20 billion, and my kids will be enjoying the benefit.
We're preparing for the Olympics.
Preparing for the Olympics, yeah.
Just before we go, talk up a little bit about when someone drives in. There's going to be that giant parking facility off campus.
Yeah.
You have the People Mover.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to all those parking lots?
They're modernizing all of them because people still like to drive. But basically, we built the largest rental car facility in the world.
Yes.
There, which is
supposedly you can see it from outer space.
You can see it from outer space. Yes, you see it from outer space. It's the second largest concrete building in the U.S. after the Pentagon. That'll be open. The People Mover will pull 30, 40, 50% of the actual traffic out of it.
So all the jitney buses and
all those, the
everything will pull off campus.
Yeah, exactly. The rental car buses, all that stuff will be off campus. A lot of the people who work at LAX will now have to pay to park close. We'll get free parking if they park where the rental car facility is. So there's 50,000 people a day who work at LAX in some capacity.
And was all this decided during the Garcetti administration?
Yeah. There's something our board put in place. I mean, we came in 2013, and the mayor had this vision of let's really modernize the airport and bring it into the 21st century. And so we put this plan together and executed on it.
It was conceived in the 50s, wasn't it? Or the 40s?
It was founded in 46, commercial airport. In the early 60s, it was the beginning of the jet age. Kennedy came out to actually christen one of the terminals. But they thought at the time, we have 4 million people now. We want to build something that can accommodate 20 million people. Well, in 2019, we had 88 million people. So that's why we had to do this modernization and rethink how to get in and out of the airport. We've modernized all the terminals. We built a new international terminal. Yeah. So my kids will enjoy that, and then look, I'll be remembered as a good husband and a good father and all of those things too.
I think you'll be remembered for having built a better community with less traffic at the airport.
Yes, that would be nice.
So thank you, Sean, for doing that. We can't wait till it's finished. Can't wait to see more of what you're doing, and thanks for being a guest on the podcast
Bob,
today.
thanks for having me on, and congratulations. You have built a wonderful business that a lot of us look up to, so congratulations on your success too.
Thank you, my friend.